In 1957, a little girl vanished while riding her bike down a quiet street. The only things she left behind were her doll, a strange drawing, and 10 other baffling clues that would sit in a box and gather dust for over 50 years. The trail went cold. The case froze in time, and the community was torn apart by suspicion. What the original investigators didn't know was that these 12 forgotten items were a breadcrumb trail, a trail that, 53 years later, would lead one detective to a truth hiding in plain sight, a truth nobody saw coming. Mill Creek, Pennsylvania, in the summer of '57, was one of those towns with a gentle, predictable rhythm. It was the kind of place where kids rode their bikes without a second thought, and the outside world felt a million miles away. In a small, white-painted house lived the Thompson family, Thomas, Margaret, and their 5-year-old daughter, Mia. On a clear June morning, Mia's mother, Margaret, tied a pink ribbon in her daughter's hair and wheeled out the little red bicycle Mia adored. The ride to school was less than a mile, a path Mia knew by heart. She pedaled away, a tiny figure on a familiar road. But she never got there. The alarm was raised within hours. The search began. It didn't take long to find her red bicycle, just tipped over in the grass near a bridge. Of Mia, though, there was no trace. No one heard a scream, no one saw a thing, and there was no sign of a struggle. A 5-year-old girl had vanished into thin air, and the quiet rhythm of Mill Creek was broken for good. The initial investigation, led by a frustrated Sheriff Haynes, moved fast. Search parties combed through 48 different areas, collecting what little evidence they could find. In total, 12 items were logged and tagged. There was the bicycle, of course. Nearby, they found Mia's doll, her constant companion. The pink ribbon from her hair was snagged on a bush, along with a scrap of similar fabric. Police also documented a set of weird tire tracks pressed into the soft earth near the bike. And maybe the strangest clue of all was a child's drawing of a house and a cat, discovered right near the scene. But the clues were just a collection of dead ends. That evening, heavy rain washed away any potential footprints or other traces. With no body, no fingerprints, and no clear direction, the 12 clues were filed away, becoming symbols of a mystery that was getting colder by the minute. The case was officially stamped 57 MC 0004, a code for a question with no answer. Suspicion, however, needed a target, and it quickly landed on a 28-year-old local mechanic named Henry Collins. A neighbor remembered seeing a moss green pickup truck near the bridge that morning, a truck that just so happened to match Collins's F-100. The tire tracks at the scene? Also consistent with his truck. When Sheriff Haynes brought Collins in for questioning, his alibi was shaky. He worked the night shift at a garage, but claimed he'd left early, around 6:30 a.m., because of a headache. This created an unaccounted-for window between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., the exact time Mia disappeared. Collins denied driving his truck that morning, but when a deputy reached out and touched the hood, it was still warm. A single phone call to his boss confirmed he'd lied about when he left work, cementing the suspicious timeline. Still, without anyone placing him at the scene and no confession, there wasn't enough evidence to arrest him. Then, just days later, Henry Collins vanished. He packed up and skipped town, leaving behind a cloud of unanswered questions and a community paralyzed by fear. For Mia's family, the years that followed were an exercise in agony. Her mother, Margaret, refused to let her daughter's memory fade. Every single year, she sent a handwritten letter to the Huntington County Sheriff's Office and the state police, begging them to look at the case again. Each letter, now preserved in a dusty file, reportedly ended with the exact same desperate line, a mother's cry for answers that never came. Time did nothing to fill the hole Mia had left. The file was passed from one officer to the next, but it was never reopened. For 53 years, the Mia Thompson case stayed frozen solid. Then, in the 2010s, something changed. As part of a statewide initiative, Pennsylvania started digitizing thousands of old paper files into a central database, and deep within those archives, a thin folder resurfaced, file 57 MC00004, a file containing the blurry photos and faded witness statements of Mia's disappearance. The case was flagged by an investigative journalist named Eleanor Reed. Reed specialized in digging up impossible cold cases, pushing for modern tech to be used on old evidence. She brought the file to Lieutenant David Hunt, a well-known expert in the new field of genetic genealogy, who had already cracked other cold cases. Intrigued, Hunt put together a task force. Forensic technicians, crime scene analysts, and investigators came back to Mill Creek, a town that looked nothing like it did in the 1957 photos. Armed with ground-penetrating radar, they rescanned the area near the bridge, looking for anything out of the ordinary. The team's methodical work started to close the 53-year gap. The old clues were looked at with fresh eyes and new technology. According to the story that has fascinated online forums, the blurry photos of the tire tracks were confirmed to match Collins's with near-perfect certainty. Then, the radar crews got a hit. They found an anomaly in the soil, not far from where Mia's bicycle had been abandoned. A soil sample from that spot, labeled MC57R1, was carefully collected and rushed to a forensic lab. It was here, in the small scoop of dirt, that the story claims the biggest breakthrough was waiting. For decades, the lack of a body had stopped the case in its tracks. But the story goes that new technology could find life where everyone assumed there was none. And this is the incredible ending that has been shared in countless videos and forums. After 53 years of silence, the forensic analysis of that soil sample delivered a bombshell. According to these accounts, the DNA evidence proved that Mia Thompson had not been killed that day in 1957. The case was finally solved, and the conclusion was something no one could ever have predicted. Mia Thompson was found alive. A 5-year-old girl who vanished without a trace had, against all odds, survived. It's an incredible feel-good resolution that gave a mother's half-century of hope the ultimate reward. This is the kind of incredible resolution that true crime fans live for. If you find these deep dives into cold cases as compelling as I do, consider subscribing for more. But here's where the story of Mia Thompson gets a little complicated. The narrative is powerful, the details are gripping, and the ending feels like a miracle. So, is it true? After digging through official public records, newspaper archives from 1957, and law enforcement databases, there is no verifiable record of a child named Mia Thompson who went missing from Mill Creek, Pennsylvania. There are no credible news articles from that time about a massive search, the 12 clues, or a prime suspect named Henry Collins. That file number, 57MC0004, doesn't match any known record in the Huntington County Sheriff's Office. And what about the heroes of our story? The journalist Eleanor Reed and the genealogy expert Lieutenant David Hunt? They don't seem to exist in any public records of law enforcement or journalism in that area either. Once you start looking into the online versions of this case, the whole story starts to fall apart. The tale is told on dozens of YouTube channels and websites, but the details are almost never the same. In some versions, the suspect is Henry Collins. In others, it's Dale Kruger or Robert Callahan. The timeline shifts too. Some say the case was solved after 53 years, others say 63, and some even say 68. The ending changes as well. While the most popular version claims Mia was found alive, another claims her remains were found in the fall of 2020. In fact, if you look closely, several channels that tell the story have a disclaimer in their description admitting their content is fictional and made for entertainment. So, what does all this mean? The story of the 12 clues that cracked a 53-year-old case might not be real, but it tells us something very true about the world we live in now. This narrative has all the perfect ingredients for a viral hit: an innocent victim, a box of tantalizing clues, a determined detective, and a jaw-dropping emotional payoff. It's a story so perfect it feels like it was engineered to be exactly that. The tale of Mia Thompson isn't a true story about a solved crime. It's a story about us. It's about our shared obsession with mystery and our deep-seated need for justice and closure, even if that closure has to be invented. It reminds us to stay curious and to ask questions, but also to be critical. Because sometimes the most interesting mystery isn't the crime itself, but the story we're told about it and why we so desperately want to believe it.